Today, we will be talking about the individualistic culture traits. Culture plays a very significant role in the development of the self-concept. It embodies specific values, thoughts, or ideas that play a central role in determining a person's sense of self. The two dominant self-concepts are the individualistic self and collective self. Our objective is to answer questions regarding this topic such as what is individualistic culture? What are the characteristics of individualistic culture? How individualistic culture differ from collectivist culture? And how individualistic culture affects behavior. Individualistic cultures are those that stress the needs of the individual over the needs of the group as a whole. In this type of culture, people are seen as independent and autonomous. Social behavior tends to be dictated by the attitudes and preferences of individuals. Cultures in North America and Western Europe practice individualism. A few common characteristics of individualistic culture includes being dependent upon others is often considered shameful or embarrassing. Independence is highly valued. Individual rights take center stage. People often place a greater emphasis on standing out and being unique. People tend to be self-reliant. The rights of individuals tend to take a higher precedence. With this, we can say that with the characteristics of individualistic culture, the presence of cooperation is not applicable. It focuses on self-well-being and is not concerned the sake of the group. Success and rights of an individual matters. A few countries that are considered individualistic cultures include the United States, Germany, Ireland, South Africa, and Australia. Chances are you have already heard the terms individualistic and collectivist cultures before, often in the context of noting behavior and attitude differences between the two types of societies. So what exactly makes individualistic cultures different from collectivist ones? Individualistic and collectivist culture is very opposite when it comes to practices. In individualistic cultures, people are considered good if they are strong, self-reliant, assertive, and independent. This contrasts with collectivist cultures, where characteristics like being self-sacrificing, dependable, generous, and helpful to others are for greater importance. How individualistic cultures differ from collectivist cultures? Individualist cultures are frequently compared and contrasted with the more collectivist cultures, where collectivism stresses the importance of the group and social cooperation. Individualism prizes things such as autonomy or the state of being or acting separately from others, independence or the freedom from outside control or support or the state of being independent, self-sufficiency or defined as able to maintain oneself without outside aid, uniqueness or the quality of being particularly remarkable, special, or unusual. Where people in collectivist cultures might be more likely to turn to family and friends for support during difficult times, those living in individualist cultures are more likely to go it alone. Individualistic cultures stress that people should be able to solve problems or accomplish goals on their own without having to rely on assistance from others. People are often expected to pull themselves up by their bootstraps when they encounter setbacks. This tendency to focus on personal identity and autonomy is a pervasive part of a culture that can have a profound influence on how a society functions. For example, workers in an individualist culture are more likely to value their own well-being over the good of the group. Contrast this with the collectivist culture where people might sacrifice their own comfort for the greater good of everyone else. Such differences can influence nearly every aspect of behavior, ranging from the career a person chooses, the products they buy, and the social issues that they care about. A Approaches to healthcare, for example, are influenced by these tendencies. Individualist cultures stress the importance of each person taking care of his or herself without depending on others for assistance. Those in collectivist culture may instead stress sharing the burden of care with the group as a whole. As we analyze the photos, we can see that individualistic culture prioritizes success of herself, while on the other hand, collectivists shared success with family. In a basketball tournament, acknowledging most valuable player or the MVP among the team is an example of individualism, and acknowledging the efforts of the team is practiced by collectivism. When you support yourself financially and do not depend on anyone else for your needs, this is an example of individualism. When the government allows citizens to be responsible for their own retirement instead of relying on social security, this is also an example of individualism. The effect that culture has on individual behavior is a major topic of interest in the field of cross-cultural psychology. Cross-cultural psychologists study how different cultural factors influence individual behavior. They often focus on things that are universal among different cultures of the world, as well as differences among societies. One interesting phenomenon that cross-cultural psychologists have observed is how people from individualist cultures describe themselves compared to how those from collectivist cultures describe themselves. People from individualist societies have self-concepts that are more focused on independence rather than interdependence. As a result, they tend to describe themselves in terms of their unique personal characteristics and traits. A person from an individualistic culture might say, "I am analytical, sarcastic, and athletic." This can be contrasted with self-descriptions from people living in collectivist societies, who would be more likely to say something like, "I am a good husband and a loyal friend." These cultures expect individuals to learn and discover what their values and interests are independent of the group's social structures. This valuing of independence, self-sufficiency, and self-definition leads to social behaviors driven by the desires of individuals. People who live in individualist cultures tend to believe that independence, competition, and personal achievement are important. Most sociologists agree that individualistic cultures value individual choice, personal freedom, and self-actualization. As a result, the needs of individuals dictate social behaviors rather than the needs of larger groups. Fundamentally, individualism is a belief that the individual is an end in themselves. Consequently, individuals are obligated to realize and find a self and cultivate their own judgment regardless of social pressure encouraging conformity. So those are the effects of individualistic culture to the behavior. I hope you have learned something and that we successfully achieved our objectives for today. Do not forget the key concept. Individualistic cultures are those that stress the needs of the individual over the needs of the group as a whole, while collectivist culture stress the needs of the group as a whole over the needs of the individuals. Thank you for listening and God bless everyone!